Apparently you like dual-wielding swords, cutting your enemies into small pieces, harassing your enemy healers into oblivion, and slicing and dicing in general. Well, as a warrior, you can do all of those things and a lot more. Welcome to my guide on Warrior in TERA. Before we go any further, I need to make a disclaimer. This will not be the end-all be-all min-maxing guide. If you want to get into min-maxing your warrior, I have a link to an excellent written guide by Bernkastel in the video description. My guide will be for newer players to get them familiarized with the class and hopefully give a good point from where to start getting better. This guide will primarily focus on playing as a DPS PvE warrior, but we'll also go over some basic PvP aspects. I will be skipping tanking altogether as I have no experience playing as one. I hope this will help you become a better warrior. As a warrior, you have the option to be a DPS, which this guide will be focusing on, or a tank, which requires a completely different playstyle. When you're a DPS, you should always stay at the backside of targets, as that is where you will be doing the most damage. Warriors are very mobile class, so that shouldn't be a problem. This guide will be separated into 4 sections: skill overview and glyphs, skill rotations, gear and rolls, and consumables. You can find timestamps to the beginning of each section in the description of the video or by clicking the timestamps on the screen. As with any class, your kit of skills makes up what you are and can do, and warriors have one of the most diverse kits in the game. Before anything else, put on Assault Stance. This is your DPS stance, and you should always have it on. It gives you 18 power and a whopping 55 crit factor, but decreases your endurance by 10%. This is a small price to pay for such a big damage increase, so have this on 100% of the time. Defensive stance is your tanking stance. What are you doing having this on? Get into Assault Stance at once! Your main invincibility frame. Evasive roll has no cooldown, but instead uses Warrior's Resolve to perform the skill. Each use consumes 500 Resolve out of the maximum 1500. The affirmative glyph is an extremely useful one on this skill, reducing the resolve usage by 100 or 120 with the rare glyph, allowing you to dodge more often and more times in a row if the need would arise. It is not mandatory, however, as warriors have plenty of iframes already. The Swift glyph is also useful, having a 40% chance for increasing your attack speed by 15% for 10 seconds. As for the Mending glyph, I don't even know why this exists. You can use Vortex Slash within 5 seconds of using this skill. Death from Above, or DFA for short, is your other main iframe. It gives you around 2 seconds of invincibility and can be a lifesaver in many situations. It also immediately regenerates 225 resolve and generates 1 edge on the opponent with a successful hit. The Energetic glyph is a must-have, decreasing the skill's cooldown by 30%. The Swift glyph is interchangeable with the Evasive Rolls glyph with the same effect, depending on the boss you're fighting. As with Evasive Roll, you can use Vortex Slash within 5 seconds of using this skill. Vortex Slash is a skill you use only situationally. As stated before, you can only use this skill within a few seconds of performing Evasive Roll or DFA, even if you use other skills in between. The skill hits multiple targets around you in a circle, dealing moderate damage. There aren't any useful glyphs for this skill. The skill changes into Blade Draw. One of your main skills, Combative Strike, uses a small portion of your health to generate 1 edge on the opponent and decrease their endurance by 8%. In PvP, it also decreases all healing affecting the enemy by 30%. The endurance debuff is overwritten by any tank in your party. The skill changes into Rain of Blows, Traverse Cut or Reaping Slash. Despite its low damage, Poison Blade is high on your priority list as it generates 1 edge and is so fast to cast. The skill is even better when using Noctanium as it will generate 2 edge instead. Despite its high priority, there are no useful glyphs for Poison Blade. The skill change into Traverse Cut or Scythe. Your other debuff, Traverse Cut, hits 3 times in a quick succession, but activates faster after Combative Strike, Poison Blade or Pounce, making it hit more rapidly and up to 13 times. Each hit decreases the target's endurance by 0.35% and the effect stacks to 13 times, totaling to 4.55%. You should keep all the stacks up at all times, as it increases both your and your whole party's damage output. This skill change into Blade Draw. Charging Slash makes you charge to an enemy within 16 or 17 meters, generating 1 edge on them on a successful hit. It's a great mobility skill as it is faster than any mount in the game, even in combat. The Energetic Glyph is a must, as it brings the skill's cooldown much closer to blade draws. The power-linked glyph is also a good one to use, increasing Combative Strike's damage by 50% for a few seconds. This skill is a very important one, as it is the fastest way to chain into blade draw. The chaining only works if you first hit the target with the skill. Our next skill is an interesting one. Rising Fury deals more damage the lower your health is. You can press the button once to execute 2 fast strikes, which stagger enemy players, and press the button a second time for a third, harder hitting strike that knocks other players down. This skill generates 1 edge on the target, but only with the last hit. You also take 20% less damage while using this skill. You can also move around the battlefield quite rapidly with the first 2 strikes as they move you forward. There are no useful glyphs for this skill. This skill changes into Blade Draw, but only from the 3rd hit. Rain of Blows deals considerable damage, generates 1 edge, and makes you more resistant to knockdown and stagger. It also reduces damage taken by 30% while using it. This skill is mostly used in reserve for when your higher priority skills are on cooldown. The Empowered Glyph is a must-have on this skill, increasing the skill's damage by 25%. The Restorative Glyph is more of a personal preference, healing you for 0.5% of your total health with each hit. If you're planning on soloing any dungeons, this is one of the better glyphs to have. For parties with a healer, use your points somewhere else. This skill changes into Scythe and Reaping Slash, and activates faster after Combative Strike, Bounce or Cascade of stuns. The bread and butter of your rotations. Blade Draw hits your target twice, generating 1 edge on the second hit, while doing very good damage. What makes this skill the center of your rotations is the Persistent Glyph, making the skill have a 50% chance to eliminate its cooldown. You must also use the Empowered, Advantageous and the new Carving Glyphs, making the skill do 25% more damage, generate 1 additional edge, and double the crit chance to monsters respectively. You should leave out the last glyph when doing PvP, as the crit chance only applies to monsters. This skill changes into Scythe. You have heard me mention edge a few times now. Well, Warrior's playstyle is unique in the sense that you build up edge on your opponent and use Scythe as sort of a finisher. This skill can be the hardest or the lowest hitting one in your arsenal, depending on the amount of edge generated. As its description says, Scythe exploits edge generated by warrior skills to do more damage. I'm not going to go into any deeper mathematical stuff in this guide for the increase each edge gives to the damage and crit chance of the skill, but in short, you want to execute this skill only when you have 10 edge built up, ideally chaining it from Blade Draw, Poison Blade, Rain of Blows or Evasive Roll, as it makes the skill execute much faster. Scythe also knocks down enemy players in PvP. Both the Empowered and Carving Glyphs are mandatory for this skill, both in PvE and PvP. Your only self-buff ability, Deadly Gamble, is essentially a god mode for you. It decreases all of your melee skills cooldowns by half, except for stuns, and increases your chance to crit by 50% for 20 seconds. Both the Energetic and Lingering Glyphs are mandatory, decreasing the cooldown by 25% and increasing the duration by 20% or another 5 seconds, respectively. You should use this skill every time it's off cooldown, or save it for DPS checks in higher end dungeons at bosses that have them, as it is a big damage boost. Well, that's your main skills covered. time to move on to the rest of them, some more useful than others. One of the two skills you start with, Combo Attack, is nothing special compared to the other classes. It deals minimal damage while restoring some mana and resolve with each hit. In PvP, the second hit also staggers the enemy. The glyphs for this skill may seem useful for different scenarios, but this skill is essentially useless, so you shouldn't use any glyphs for it. A very useful repositioning skill, and a skill that makes you super annoying in PvP. Backstab teleports you to the back of your target within 15 meters, stunning them for a brief time and generating one edge. It also gives you a short iframe period. All the glyphs are useful for this skill, but only for PvP applications. One could make an argument for the advantageous glyph for PvE too, increasing the edge generation by 1, but since the skill has a long cooldown and is useful for repositioning too, I would advise against it. Another maneuvering skill. Leaping Strike makes you leap forward 10 meters, striking the ground at the end. If you hit a knockdown opponent, the skill deals 5 times the damage. This skill is only useful for movement, as the damage is minuscule, even to knock down targets. Using even the one glyph for a skill you should never have to use is a waste of points. Another mostly useless skill, Pounce, makes you move forward 7 meters and slow targets by 50% on a successful hit. It deals okay damage, but does not generate any edge, which makes it useless in PvE. However, it does chain into Traverse Cut and Rain of Blows. This means that if, for some reason, you need to chain into them and all of the other skills you could use are on cooldown, you could use Pounce to do so. And just for that reason, I would use the Hastenet glyph on it. But only if you have all other mandatory glyphs already in use. So if you have to use this skill, at least it executes faster. One of the cornerstones of your PvP skills, Cascade of Stuns, extends the stun on the target if you hit an already stunned target, and spreads the stun to nearby targets. This skill finds some use in PvE too, with stunning a horde of mobs at once, making them easier to kill. You should use the Lingering and Power-linked glyphs for PvP, increasing the stun's duration by 25% and the damage of Rain of Blows by 20% respectively. The skill changes into Rain of Blows. If you're hit, you can use Staggering Counter within a few seconds to turn your enemy around and stun them for a brief time. As you can imagine, this is very useful in PvP as you'll be hit a lot in there. This skill also finds some uses when fighting BAMs, especially on Island of Dawn, giving you more back time. You cannot use it in defensive stance. The Lingering glyph is useful for PvP, increasing the stun's duration by 50%. Yet another stun. Battle Cry makes you shout, potentially stunning targets within 10 meters of you and drawing high aggro from mobs. This is mostly useful when dealing with groups of mobs that you need to stun. Using Cascade of Stuns after Battle Cry can stun a large amount of mobs, making them easier to deal with. In PvP, you can use this to stun your opponent before knocking them down. The Hastenet glyph is useful for PvP, making the cast 50% faster. A fun and occasionally useful skill. Binding Sword lets you pull up to 4 targets in front of you from up to 21 meters away. The skill staggers enemy players. The skill is so situational that any glyphs for it are a waste of points. Just like with any other class, Retaliate lets you jump back up on your feet after being knocked down, and makes you immune to staggers, stuns and knockdowns for a couple of seconds. The Energetic glyph is a must for PvP, otherwise use your points elsewhere. Reaping Slash stuns mobs and knocks down enemy players, generating 1 edge on them. Even though it gives 1 edge, it is worthless in PvE, as your rotations have no room for it. Only use this for stunning bosses if a mechanic needs it. In PvP, if the enemy has Gaia's Shield active, they will be stunned instead of knocking them down. Using any glyphs for a useless skill is a waste of points. A sort of a panic button. Smoke Aggressor sacrifices 20% of your health to summon a shadow of yourself for 20 seconds. The shadow gains 1.5 times the health you used and retains the aggro from mobs, essentially making them attack it instead of you. This skill is only useful if you're the last one alive and you need to resurrect your healer, as it gives you the time to do so. Otherwise, this skill is useless. Don't use any glyphs for it either. You can use the command attack and follow to order your smoke aggressor around. You can only use cross parry in defensive stance. The skill uses your resolve to block frontal attacks. The amount of damage blocked is determined by your weapon and defense. This is a tanking skill and you shouldn't even be able to use it since you're in assault stance. Your main tanking skill, Torrent of Blows, throws high aggro from mobs around you and makes you take only half damage while using it. You will also be more resistant to knockdown and stagger. Needless to say, you should never use this skill while DPSing, nor use any glyphs for it. Smoke Flanker works kinda like Backstab. After a successful block, you can summon a shadow on your position that gets your aggro and teleport to the target's back yourself, briefly stunning them. This skill is useful only if you need to change glyphs in the middle of a boss fight while tanking, and is kinda iffy even then. Needless to say again, this is a tanking skill and you should never be able to even use it since you're in assault stance. Infuriate enrages all monsters within 10 meters and gives you maximum aggro. Enraging a monster makes them deal more damage and increase their attack speed, but will also make you able to take advantage of the enraged damage lines on your weapon and armor, making you do more damage and take less in return. You can only use this skill while in defensive stance, and with the recent change, cannot deactivate it for 3 minutes after using this skill. This makes it purely a tanking skill and you should never use it. Last, and certainly the least, is Mangle. This is a toggleable passive that makes your 4th combo attack decrease the enemy's movement speed by 15% and makes you lose 10 mana every 2 seconds. This skill is useless. Do not use this under any circumstances. This covers our skills. Now for Glyph Builds. These are the glyphs I use for PvE. Pretty self-explanatory. If you don't have all the master and rare glyphs, you should skip the restorative glyph on Rain of Blows and the hastenet glyph on Pounce to glyph up all the other, arguably more useful glyphs. If you have all glyphs unlocked, you can switch the hastenet Pounce to Brilliant Blade Draw to have less mana issues. For PvP, things are more flexible, but these are the mandatory ones. The rest are up to you. This is my glyph setup and I've had no problems using it. Now that we know what each of our skills do and we have the right glyphs, we can talk about chaining them together. First, let's talk about PvE. Warrior rotations are heavily dependent on blade draw resets, and since it's random, there is no one optimal rotation, so you just have to play the class a lot to get used to the skills cooldowns and find a good flow in your combat. The first thing you want to do when entering a boss battle is to let the tank go in first and get the aggro. After that, use Backstab to get to the boss's back, then do Combative Strike into Traverse Cut into Blade Draw. If Blade Draw resets, use Charging Slash to chain into Blade Draw again. If Blade Draw resets again, use Rising Fury to chain into Blade Draw. This is the best case scenario for a start, so if your RNG was good and you managed to do that, you should have 10 edge built up now. Use Scythe right after the last Blade Draw. However, if your Blade Draw doesn't reset at any point, you should use Poison Blade and then Combative Strike into Rain of Blows. In practical terms, during this time, Blade Draw should be close enough to have its cooldown end that you can use Rising Fury and chain into Blade Draw after that. Players with high attack speed or low ping may have to do Combative Strike into Rain of Blows, Poison Blade, Combative Strike again, and Rising Fury. Once you have used Scythe and see that magnificent multi-million critical hit, you're back at 0 edge, but with a lot of skills on cooldown. Your top priority is always to chain into blade draw every time you're able to, and use the most efficient filler skills in between if you have to. To know what fillers are the best, we need to look at the edge they generate, the time it takes for the animation to complete, and the damage of the skill itself. This makes Poison Blade your strongest filler skill, and Combative Strike comes after that if power linked from Charging Slash, as both of them are really fast to cast and give off 1 edge each. If you're using Noctanium, Poison Blade is the filler to use as soon as Blade Draw goes on cooldown, as it gives 2 edge. Your rotation during Deadly Gamble should be Charging Slash into Blade Draw, Combative Strike or Poison Blade, and repeat. If you cannot do them, follow the rules stated before. If you want to look into min-maxing the order of Blade Draw chains and more, check the link in the description for a min-maxing guide. So what should you do if there is more than one warrior in the same party? As the edge is shared among warriors, it is important for the warrior with the highest damage to Scythe. You should inspect the other warriors before starting and figure out which one of you should Scythe. If your damages are similar, you can just alternate scything, as there will otherwise be a lot of wasted edge, as it is generated much faster than only one warrior scything will be able to use. Alright, let's talk about PvP now. Keep in mind that these are the best case scenarios, and do not count for the enemy using any stun resistance skills, Gaia's Shield or other similar skills. You should learn the animations for each skill other classes have for their stun resistance skills, so you don't waste your stuns on them. As warriors don't have any AoE, they excel at 1 versus 1 situations, and are very good for picking off, or at least harassing single targets, such as enemy healers. First thing you always want to do is get the enemy knocked down and make them use their retaliate. After that, wait a couple of seconds for the effect to wear off. Now you have a couple of combos you can pull off. Number 1. This is the simpler one and will always work, even with lower attack speeds. You backstab, then use Cascade of Stuns and chain into Rain of Blows and into Reaping Slash. Or number 2. Which is a little more complex and works better the more attack speed you have. With lower attack speeds, the enemy may have time to get away from you between your skills. You use Evasive Roll or DFA, backstab them, use Vortex Slash and chain it into Blade Draw. Do Cascade of Stuns, into Rain of Blows, into Reaping Slash. Now that the enemy is knocked down again, use Rising Fury to keep them knocked down and chain it into Blade Draw. After this, you can put in a Poison Blade and chain it into Scythe. Be sure to strike from the back of your enemy. Every time you knock someone down, they turn to face you, so you should jump over them to get back at their rear side. Again, the more attack speed you have, the less time your enemy has to get up and get away. Gear is next on the list. Your weapon is the most important part of your gear, as it is the biggest factor in determining your damage. What makes an even bigger difference are the rolls on the weapon. For PvE, you want 2 enraged damage rolls, back damage roll and a flat damage roll. If you have a Vision Maker weapon, cooldown reduction is the best roll for the 4th bottom roll. You can switch the top line for a 9% attack speed roll depending on your preferences. I for myself like the extra attack speed, and that's why I have it on my weapon. For PvP, you want 2 attack speed rolls, back damage roll, and a flat damage roll. If you have a Vision Maker weapon, you can go for either crit power, crit factor, or cooldown reduction for the 4th roll. Your chest piece is very simple. You want blade draw damage for the class specific line, and flat damage reduction, frontal damage reduction, and enraged monster damage reduction for PvE. For PvP, you should switch the enraged damage reduction to damage reduction while knocked down. If you have a Vision Maker chest piece, get a HP roll in there too. Gloves are simple. You should go for the basic DPS rolls, crit factor, power, and attack speed. Boots are simple too. Endurance and movement speed are the mandatory ones, and mana regen or slowness reduction for the last one. Your belt should have 6 crit factor and 3 power rolled on it. Your jewelry has two options, full crit like most other DPS classes go for, or a balance between crit and power. Your assault stance essentially gives you a set of crit jewelry for free, and the jewelry in this game have come to the point where your crit factor would be unnecessarily high if you were to go with full crit build. That's why I would suggest to go with the balance of crit jewelry and power jewelry if you're going for min-maxing. A full crit set would be a safer bet for people who aren't going for such feats. The rolls to aim for your rings are 4 power and 4 crit factor. 4 power on the necklace and 4 endurance plus 4% HP on the earrings for PvE. Switch out that endurance to stun reduction for PvP. Your brooch is a choice between empowered and quick carve brooches. Ideally you would have the new quarterfoil brooch, but that's out of many players' reach. Empowered brooch gives 40 power for 15 seconds, while quick carve brooch gives 50 crit factor and 12% attack speed for 15 seconds. The quarterfoil brooch gives 30 power, 30 crit factor, 12% attack speed for 15 seconds, and also cleanses you from debuffs. The ideal rolls are 6 and 4 crit factor for empowered and quick carve brooches, and 6 crit factor and 3 power for the quarterfoil brooch. If you cannot afford the superior version of the brooches, use the simple versions. You should use your brooch every time you use Deadly Gamble to give your DPS even bigger boost. For innerwear, crit factor is the best, always. If you cannot afford the 16 crit panties, go with the 12 crit ones. The crystals for your weapon and armor are simple. 1 savage, 1 bitter and 1 focused nivet for PvE. Most other classes would use a carving nivet for the last one, but warriors shouldn't need one, so we're going with a forceful nivet. The more your stats rise, however, pounding becomes a better option. If you're feeling daredevilish, use a slaying crystal instead. It increases your crit multiplier even further, but only works if you're under 50% HP. For armor, you want to go with 4 hardy nivets. At least 1 glistening armor dyad is a very big bonus to have, as it completely eliminates any need for mana potions, which you will have to use otherwise to keep your DPS up. For PvP, we keep the savage and forceful nivets and replace the other 2 with salivating and cruel nivets. You should also change the hardy nivets to relentless ones. For jewelry, go with Keen for PvE, Indomitable Zergs for PvP battlegrounds, and Griefing Zergs for smaller scale PvP scenarios. Etchings are a very important part of Tier 2. They cost a lot, but even the Tier 2 etchings make a big difference. For PvE, you want Keen Etchings for both weapon and gloves. If you have hit Scythe's crit cap, however, use Energetic Etchings instead, Grounded Etchings for armor and boots. For PvP, you want Energetic Etchings for your weapon and gloves, and Unyielding for armor and boots. Now that you have your skills, glyphs, rotations, and gear, it's time to talk about consumables. You should always use greater power, enduring, and infused charms, at the very least. For PvP, use unyielding charm instead of enduring. Battle nostrums and crit power scrolls are widely available, so there is no reason for you to not use them, as they give you a big boost in damage, lowering your cooldowns and making you hit harder respectively. If you don't have any, just buy a bunch of them from a dungeon merchant. Bravery potions and Canephora potions are nice to have, but aren't mandatory for most situations. Bravery increases your damage and defense by 10% and attack speed by 4%, and Canephora increases your damage by 12%, making them very good DPS boosting potions. You can only use one at a time, and using a Canephora will override a Bravery. Nocturnium infusions are mostly a luxury item. They increase your damage output by a few percent. Do remember that if you're using them, your poison blade takes a huge priority jump, so adjust your skill usage accordingly. Heaven's elixirs increase your power, endurance, impact factor, balance factor, crit factor, and movement speed by 3. They are really expensive and are mostly used for min-maxing. At least they last for 3 real-life days. Those increase your DPS, but what about keeping it up? Mana elixirs and restoratives are essential if you don't have a glistening armor dyad, as you will run out of mana quickly without them. You should also carry a few types of health potions for critical situations. Make sure they don't share cooldowns with each other. Warding scrolls are useful too for critical situations. Eclipse potions will help the tank keep aggro if you think they cannot keep up with your DPS output. Different types of panaceas will help you keep your stamina maxed out even during long fights. You should also carry rapid scrolls of resurrection in case you need to resurrect your healer. The consumables will change in an upcoming patch, and I'm planning on making a video explaining the changes. This brings us to the end of this guide. I hope I was able to shine some light into the ins and outs of Warrior and possibly make you a better one while doing so. Warriors are one of the more complex classes in TERA, and they take a lot of time and practice to perfect. Even I haven't done so yet. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the other side.